Hi, I am Tasha, and I wanted to take a journey and thought I'd invite all of you with me. I inherited several of my grandmother's recipes, and by my grandmother, I mean my mom's mom, my dad's mom, my great-grandmother's. So I have lots of family recipes that I've never made, or maybe have made one or two times, or I've made a lot of times, and they're just a family favorite and something that we enjoy. So the first recipe I'm going to work on this morning with you is this baby food cake. When I was thinking through, okay, what recipe am I going to try first? I thought, why not do the very first thing I ever made? So baby food cake is the first cake I ever made. And I remember I was probably 8-ish, 7, 8 at the time. And I remember making it and pulling it out of the oven, and it successfully came out of the bump pan. And I was like, oh, gotta call Grandma. So I called Grandma. I was so excited because we had always talked about baking and cooking, which I not really enjoy cooking, but I love baking. Baking is so precise and no guessing. As long as you know what you're doing. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing and it's an experimentation, but it's not something that you taste a food that you're making and think, I'm gonna add a little bit of this and a little bit of this. It's precise. You have to have the flour the right way, the sugar the right way, oil or butter, eggs, all of that to make a successful cake, cookie, pie, whatever you're making. And I love that about baking. So the interesting thing about this recipe is, if you look closely, there's no instructions. So I'm pretty sure my mom walked me through this the first time I made it. And so what we're gonna do is, based on my knowledge of cakes and baking, we're going to guess the steps. So the first thing that we're gonna add in here is a cup of oil. Now this says a cup of Wesson oil. And Wesson is just the brand. So vegetable oil, canola oil is probably fine. And then 2 cups of sugar. I pre-measured this because I weigh all my ingredients. If you don't weigh your ingredients, then that could be why some of your things turn out inconsistently. So I always weigh everything. A cup of sugar is 200 grams. So this is 400 grams of sugar. And I'm gonna start mixing that. I forgot to put on my apron. I can hear my mom telling me, put on your apron because that's how you ruin your clothes. And let me tell you, I've ruined a lot of clothes. So, I've creamed the sugar and the oil. Now, when you cream butter and sugar, it's usually to add air into the recipe. Oil acts differently, and I'll have to research the difference, but I do know it's different. Also, when you're using oil, you don't have to use room temperature eggs. So, because you don't have to worry about your recipe splitting. So it says to add eggs 1 at a time. So I'm gonna beat them in 1 at a time. All my eggs that are in and fully incorporated. Now, for the interesting ingredient, baby food. Baby food used to come in glass jars. I looked, could not find glass jars with the type of baby food I needed. So this calls for a jar of apricot, people say it different, and a jar of prune. And I believe a jar used to be 4 ounces, which sometimes you can find 4-ounce jars. I had to buy plastic. So, and I had to also get peach because I could not find just apricot. It usually was mixed with other fruits. So, and it may be just the stores around me, I'm not sure. But I'm using a jar or 4 ounces of peach, and then 4 ounces, 4 ounces of prune, which I know you think, that sounds gross, but if I remember correctly, and I haven't made this cake in a long time, it is really good. So we're gonna trust the recipe and the process. My mom was telling me this was the very first recipe she ever made. So it's kind of our tradition. Now, it's not the first recipe my daughter's ever made because she's never tried this before. So anyway, I'm gonna add in our baby food here. I've mixed all the wet ingredients in. I wanted to get those really nice and mixed before we start adding our flour, because you don't want to overmix once you get your flour in there, because it'll build too much gluten and then it won't be soft and fluffy and moist. It'll be chewy. We don't want chewy cake like bread. Okay, the next thing, I've already measured out these ingredients: cinnamon, soda, and salt. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of soda means baking soda, and half a teaspoon of salt. So we're gonna dump those in. And 2 cups of flour. Pre-measured, 120 grams is 1 cup. So this is 240 grams of flour. I mix that until just incorporated. Now I'm gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla, and I'm not gonna pour it in a teaspoon. I'm gonna measure with my heart. Okay, I think that was about a teaspoon. I'm gonna fold in a cup of pecans. Those of you who know me know that I have a child allergic to nuts, and so he will not be eating this cake. He'll have to eat something else. Folding is where you're gently incorporating the ingredients and not mixing, because we don't want to build a lot of that gluten in the flour. I'm going to cook this in this bump pan. This has been around since I made this cake the first time when I was, what, 8? So she's been around for a long time. Old faithful little bump pan. So this is what we're gonna bake our cake in today. I greased and floured my bump pan. So now I'm gonna pour my cake batter in here. There's the cake batter. That looks good, yummy. Putting this in at a 350-degree oven for 1 hour. I'm gonna try 50 minutes to start with. Once it's in that oven, don't open it until it's done, or it could fall. Okay. Took the cake out of the oven. We're gonna turn it out in just a minute. I needed to let it sit in the pan for 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to make a sauce. That was my daughter right there. Also, you can see Bluey sitting on that table behind me. Lovely. Okay, 1 stick of butter. The recipe says half oleo. So I'm gonna guess that it's half a cup, which would be 1 stick. And oleo, butter, some people may have used margarine, but we're using butter, and I'm using unsalted butter because that's just what I'm using. That's what I have. So I'm gonna add just a little touch of salt there. Pre-measured my sugar, so I have a cup of sugar and half a cup of water. And half a teaspoon of vanilla. Once again, measuring with my heart. It's probably a little more like a teaspoon, but all right. And the recipe says to boil until clear. So we're gonna get this boiling. Wish I could tell you what this tastes like because I don't remember. It's been so long ago since I've made this cake. And honestly, I'm not sure why it got out of our rotation. My guess is that when I was younger, we would have just had baby food in the house because I have 3 younger brothers. And now we just don't have baby food. So, I mean, I had to purposefully buy it to make this recipe. So my guess is that maybe people made this because they already had all of these ingredients in their house. Also, if I remember correctly, the baby food doesn't make the flavor of the cake. It'd be like adding applesauce to something, making it a little more moist so it's not a dry cake. This is gonna be a minute till it boils, so be back. Okay, I'm trying to get camera angles right here. So look, it turned out so nicely. I just have one little blemish right there. It smells so good. It smells spice, like kind of like a spice cake, I'd say. I have my sauce here. I boiled until it was clear, and I'm just gonna dump it over the top of the cake. I mean, my guess is I was supposed to pour this on while it was still in the bun pan so it could soak it all up. So that's a little bit of a mess because it is all over the place. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to put it back in here and probably make a giant mess, but okay. Now we're just gonna pour the rest of this over this in the bun pan and let it soak it all up. So that makes the most sense. And something that I will do when I write this recipe down for somebody else. So here it is in the bun pan. I'm gonna let it soak in for a little bit and then I'll turn it back out on the cake plate. Okay, I was talking to my mom who has made this recipe, and she thinks that you're supposed to put the syrup on there after you turn it out and just like fill up the middle of the bundt. I don't know. It's probably however you want to do it. Okay. Well, that looks delicious. And it looks all buttery and yummy. And I'm gonna let it cool down a little bit and then I'm gonna try a piece. Here's the cake. Yummy. It smells so good. Okay, what I will say is I did not chop the pecans, and I would definitely recommend doing that. It just created a little issue when I cut into it. Let's try this. It's buttery. It is so moist. It tastes like a spice cake almost. It does not taste like baby food. It doesn't taste like prunes. It just has a really good, rich flavor. I would definitely make this again. So, learned a lot of things on my first cooking video, my heirloom kitchen. So, join me next time as we bake another one of my grandma's recipes from her box.